Check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go.
And yes, let's go. Here with the smartest man in Canada, Peter Dyakowski. How are you, buddy?
Good. I don't know. That was a lot of years ago. I've had many hits to the head since. So
I don't know.
I see how smart I am.
I've talked to you a few times. Hey, before we go any further, this was late breaking news before we came on. Larry Thompson, owner of the Edmonton Elks, passing away at the age of 65. Complications from surgery, apparently. His wife, Deb, issued a statement on behalf of the family. So, and she said she's going to she was going to keep the team because she loved the Eskimos / Elks. Should be the Eskimos. Who's kidding who? As much as he did. So yeah, just maybe a thought from you on that, because you know what? Private owner stepped up. He's, part of the team with Chris Morris, who's a great guy trying to turn that thing around.
Terrific guy. It's a very sad day. I saw that news as well. May he rest in peace. Larry stepped in and did a great thing for Edmonton, and he had passion for the game. I met him at the Grey Cup last year, just a true fan of the game. The CFL is going to miss him. Edmonton is going to miss him. He had that team on the right track, even if things weren't always clicking yet on the field. There had been so many issues, I believe, with governance in that organization. He was a gift to have stepped in when he did, and it's sad that he's no longer going to be with them. And hopefully it's motivation for those players for the rest of the season to do him proud.
Yeah, puts the game and what we're about to talk about in perspective for sure. So I want to get your thoughts, because I find you I called you before this yesterday just to say what I've always been impressed by you, and I'm not just blowing smoke up your rear end. I've always been impressed by you, not only as a player, but just the way you present yourself and how you went to bat for the league behind closed doors, and just how eloquently you speak. And so I've been following you on X, or whatever the hell they're calling it, Twitter. And I thought, okay, I want to reach out to this guy, and I want to talk, because I share some of the same things you think about, maybe a different a couple of things, but I certainly respect what you have to say. I'm not going to lie to you, my friend. This has been really taxing on me mental health wise. And some people on Twitter are like, you can need a job, or you need to get a life, or you need to get out of the house. And for me, man, now it's in the family since my kid's playing. I am more invested, kind of like a dad now, right? I'm invested, not kind of like a dad. I'm invested that way. But this has always been something that I've loved since I can remember, like since about 6 years old. It's been a part of my life. I've always wanted to be a part of this league. And so, no disrespect to the Thompson family, but when I saw that news on Monday, it was like I got a terminal diagnosis for a good friend or a family member. That's what it felt like for me. So this has been tough on me mentally. How are you feeling? What are your
let me tell you where I'm coming from here. I grew up watching this game, as a kid, going to games at BC Place Stadium. My favorite player, by the way, Louis Pasaglia.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the people say, oh, no one cares about the kicking game. He was my favorite player. One of my biggest celebrities, the biggest celebrity sighting of my childhood was seeing Louis Pasaglia on the airplane. We're on a family trip, and that I glimpsed Boris Yeltsin through a window. They had some summit in Vancouver, and I met Kim Campbell, but neither of them hold a candle to Louis Pasaglia. So I loved the BC Lions growing up. I had the T-shirt, all that stuff. Went to a lot of the games in high school. Loved going to the games. Got into playing football. Now in BC, we played American rules in high school. I never got to play Canadian rules until I got to the Tiger Cats. But we played our playoff games in BC Place. We lost in grade 12. We lost the provincial championship. I went back on the field late at night, onto the field. I was in a 20-yard end zone, and I said, I'm going to play here again. And then fast forward 6 years, my first start as a Tiger Cat, game 4 of the 2007 season, was at BC Place. I had my whole family there. It was just an incredible moment. I think we lost, but it was great. And I got to play 11 years, which is, 8.5 more than most people. And it was just the most fun I could ever have. I'm incredibly thankful for the opportunity that the league and the team, the Ticats, Bob Young. I don't know how Bob feels about these changes. I think he's a fantastic owner, and I really appreciate what he did for me by giving me an opportunity with the Tiger Cats. Ultimately, he's the guy who runs the show. He was at the top. But I played for 11 years. I spent a lot of that time as a rep in the Players Association, really thinking about the well-being of our members, which is impossible to consider without thinking about the well-being of the league.
Okay, so let me stop you for a second, okay? Hold on one second, Peter. And I listen, I'm going to give you a lot of the
floor. I'm rambling. This is good radio. You got to cut me off because I'm a talker.
I like to ramble too, but no, I like to listen to people too. So I want to pick something out here. That's kind of why I had you on. You played American rules in BC. You went to LSU.
Go Tigers.
Yeah, and you came to Canada and played in the Canadian Football League. So why are you kind of I know it sounds like a dumb question to the most intelligent man in Canada, but why are you so passionate about the Canadian game when you spent a good chunk of your life playing the American rules game?
You know, it's funny. Some people I saw on Twitter, they called me an elbows upper, and I'm not an elbows guy. I owe my education post-secondary to the United States of America. I got a scholarship. Nick Saban, the best American football coach of all time, as far as I'm concerned, gave me a scholarship, incredible opportunity of a lifetime. We won a national championship. I got to go to the White House. I was in Washington last weekend, and I thought, oh, hey, I got to do a little visit in there once. I love the United States. I think it's a wonderful country. I have American relatives. My sister-in-law is American, so all my nieces and nephews are half Americans. I have an American aunt. A lot of my teammates are Americans. I'm not anti-American. I'm not into all of the recent hysteria, the elbow-related hysteria that they tried to get everyone revved up on. I don't buy into the 51st state stuff, but I do think that Americanization of the CFL is a danger. And I am a patriotic, nationalistic Canadian. I love my country. I'm a staunch monarchist, and I love the Canadian Football League and all the things that make it special and the things that make it Canadian.
Okay, so this is a word people are misconstruing. Okay, the modernization. You're not modernizing anything. It's not like it's you had the revolutionary game. You had the different game. You're not modernizing anything. You're Americanizing it. So no disrespect. I consider him a friend. We've talked a lot. When Bo Levi Mitchell says that, or the commissioner says that, or some of these analysts say that, let's not screw it around here. It's not modernization. It's Americanization. That's what it is. Let's call it what it is.
Well, what direction do all the changes go in? There's only one direction. Show me one direction that makes the CFL more different than it was before. They're all about convergence. Every one of these changes is convergence. And the only relative comparable to frame any of these decisions is the NFL, and they're all approaching what the NFL does. So it is about convergence. And let me back up a little bit and let's talk about what happened on Sunday and Monday. We have that cryptic announcement. Everyone's hoping it's going to be good news about a TV deal. There was a sense of foreboding because many of us suspected what it was going to be about. And it was worse. It was worse than I thought it was going to be. But let's talk about the lead up to that. When you're the commissioner of a league and the board of governors who give him some degree of direction, now a strong commissioner, and other leagues have benefited from having strong commissioners. You'll see, guys like Gary Bettman drag their owners kicking and screaming into billion-dollar futures. So there is a template for a strong commissioner to lead the owners to new heights. I don't know what happened here. I don't know if this was Stuart Johnston's vision or if it was driven by certain members of the Board of Governors. I don't know what happened there. But what I do know is that those people are custodians of the game. You don't own a team like Walmart owns a store. No one's going to Walmart and cheering about how much they love Great Value brand. Or how about going to Costco and cheering about how much you love Kirkland? Because actually is a fantastic brand that's worth cheering about. As far as store brands go, Kirkland is like miles ahead. Great Value is terrible. Compliments is most of the stuff tastes like cardboard. President's Choice isn't bad. Kirkland, but no one goes to Costco cheering their guts out for Kirkland. People go to a Ticats game and they cheer their hearts out because they're cheering for their city, their team. They're a part of it. You're a custodian. Bob Young really understands that. He calls himself the caretaker. He really is. That's the attitude that he takes. And that's the awareness that you have to have, you should have, if you're in that role. You're carrying something on behalf of everybody who's a stakeholder, and that's the fans. You don't have a game to play, and I recognize this as a player. I don't have a paycheck without the fans who are coming to the game. You don't have a game without the players who are playing on the field. You don't have a game without the coaches. There's zero consultation with any stakeholders. So the fans, absolutely not. The players, not at all. The coaches, even, how are you making football decisions and not consulting your football experts?
Okay.
That blows my mind.
Yeah.
So let's pause that. I got more to say there, but isn't that crazy? You're not going to talk to your football experts?
Because the Canadian game is done. This is how I feel. And you can wear the tinfoil hat with me. You don't have to. You don't consult your coaches. You don't consult your players, but your coaches and GMs, you don't need a rules committee because you're going to be going American rules. You call junior football 15 minutes before. You tell U Sports an hour before. You tell Football Saskatchewan 9 minutes before. I found that out today. You tell them that short a time before, because you don't care about them, because they're not going to be your feeder system, because Canadians aren't going to be a part of this league. It's going to be an American league. And it's
brutally disrespectful to all of these stakeholders. It is obscenely disrespectful the way the commissioner went about this without reaching out to any of these stakeholders who play such a big role in supporting and making the CFL what it is. It's an extremely arrogant approach. It's hubristic. And now look at this backlash. First off, I think the changes are bad on their merits, but the way it was announced, the sense of betrayal that so many people are feeling, the commissioner is rightfully, personally bearing a lot of the backlash, because at the end of the day, the buck stops with him. Even though there may be Board of Governors members who say, we hired you, you have to do what we say. I don't know what happened in those conversations. But at the end of the day, the Commissioner Stuart Johnston is personally responsible for how he engages his stakeholders. And this was a massive failure, and it was obscene.
Yeah, and that's a great word. So here's the thing in today's day and age, and I'm embarrassed now to say proud on one hand, but embarrassed to say I was in mainstream media with the way it is now. Nobody asked him any tough questions. Nobody's asked him really any tough questions. Today, he did come out, and I saved the receipts. He did say, we are committed to 3-down football. He did say that, and I want him to say it over.
Because it was tough. You couldn't get that out of him on Monday.
No, he actually was asked by Justin Dunk or whoever at 3-Down Nation, and he said, we will never rule out 4-down football. I think he has got the backlash, and he's probably been told, I got to come out and say something. But now I want him to say it more and more and more, because two things are going to happen. He's either going to be committed and back himself into a corner where he has to stay with it, or he's going to be proven a liar and lose all credibility.
Well, I read today, and it was on Twitter, so who knows how reliable it is, but it was a personal recollection of hearing him speak at an event at, I believe it was Grey Cup 4 years ago, give or take, where he said he'd be open to a 4-down CFL. So I don't know how anyone who loves the CFL could say that. You can't. No one who loves the CFL, who really loves it, could say that. I'm sure in his past life as head of a major television network that made a lot of money broadcasting the CFL, he liked the CFL. The CFL made him a lot of money. The CFL is a great ratings product for TSN. And TSN, on balance, I know we complain about them airing darts when they should be doing more CFL coverage. On balance, TSN has been a great television partner for the CFL.
Yep.
But does he really love it? Can someone who loves the CFL talk about a 4-down CFL? I don't think so. But so the way he went about it, personally, buck stops with him, with this rushed announcement, it was wrong. And I'm sure it occurred to him or other people involved that it wasn't the right way to go about it. So why the rush if we have a unanimous board of governors?
You know what he said? This is the only clip I've seen him say. He did it because he was excited to announce it. Well, guess what? As a kid, like, I'm excited for Christmas. It's December 25th. Okay. As a Christian, I celebrate Christmas. I'm excited for Christmas on December 25th. I am not going to open my presents or my kids' presents on November the 18th. I'd love to make love to my girlfriend, but I'm not going to go get excited and interrupt her business to go make love. Like, I'm excited. What the hell is that? And here's the thing, Pete, you have been not only with a players association, you've been in a locker room, and we forget that, guys, we do, fans, media, we forget your people. Okay. We forget your people. And I have a vested interest now, so I can talk about it. The only media member with a kid playing right now. The boys are talking about it. They are semi-rattled. They're having to answer questions all this week. Shouldn't the commissioner have a brain to know that we have a third of the season left? It's the most critical part of the season. Nobody asked that question. Why rush it? Why rush it?
Well, there's a few things about this which force a reasonable person, a logical person, to put on your tinfoil hat. Mm-hmm. And that's one of them. If the Board of Governors is unanimously on board, if you have a mandate, if you're comfortable with your position, if you're convinced it's right, then you can take the time to engage your stakeholders. You can wait for the right moment. State of the League address at Grey Cup seems to me the ideal place for something like this. Unless you don't truly have a united Board of Governors, you got the last yes that you needed, and then you rushed to make the announcement before anybody could think better of it, backpedal, or start picking out some of these many changes to moderate it a little bit before it got announced. Mm-hmm. And sadly, that's the only logical conclusion you can draw from the way it was rushed out and from the way they went about it clandestinely with no consultations with the stakeholders that they knew were going to be offended. They didn't care. They didn't care about offending our people at U Sports, who do so much for building the game of Canadian football and producing the athletes that the CFL needs. Maybe not for much longer, according to your theory, but still the athletes that the CFL needs and who do so much for the game of Canadian football. Their coaches, their football experts, when they want their opinion, shouldn't they give them some advance notice? Hey, maybe get your locker room ready for this tension that's going to come out with a contentious issue. Talk to the players. Any change to the rules of football could potentially impact the health and safety of the game. Even if you don't think so, shouldn't you reach out to your very engaged stakeholders and your players themselves and make sure that opinion is shared? If it's the right thing to do, and if it's the best for the game, then won't you eventually get it through anyways? Unless it's something that very few people are going to agree with, you're going to have very little public support, and you just want to force the decision to lock it in. And that's what this did.
That's logical. But here's another one. I'll lob this to you. In this announcement, and you kind of touched on it at the start of the thing, in this announcement, where's the TV deal? The TV deals are done 2 years generally out from when they expire. I know this for a fact because I was sitting in the sports cage. The last TSN deal, I was sitting in the sports cage on the radio in the booth when TSN in 2019 still had 2 years left on a contract and announced their extension that we're currently in. You go to the NFL, they're a couple of years out. Where's our TV deal? They're coming out with these grandiose changes, Peter. Where's my TV deal? You don't even have a domestic TV deal for me to show off this 2027 new product. I think it's rushed because we need to show the Americans that we are ready to adopt their game. And putting on my tinfoil hat, they're going to tell you that we're still unique. We got 3 downs. Like he said today, our field is 33% wider than the NFL field, which he said today. We still have motion. It's still the Canadian game. And you know why they're saying that? Because they need the Peter Dyakowskis and the Michael Balls to go to the games this year and next year to pay the bills to get to 2027 when they can just change all the rules in 27 in the offseason.
Well, the interesting thing, let's talk about the rule changes. This, in the CFL's opinion, of course, and this is their opinion. These are items that don't need to be considered by the Rules Committee or the Health and Safety Committee or the Players Association. As again, according to the CFL, I haven't canvassed the CFLPA for their opinion. So just according to the CFL, they think they don't need to consult and they don't think there's any implications on the collective bargaining agreement. So they did everything that they thought they could do without having to seek approval from these bodies, which exist specifically to regulate changes in the game to make sure that they are well thought out, considered, and agreeable to all the parties and all the stakeholders. So let's talk about the rule changes, because do they stand even on their own merits? Why rush them out if they stand on their own merits? The end zone size and the goalpost move, those are connected. You can't move the goalpost without shrinking the end zone somewhat, because it's just, even now, the effect on the kicking game is obscene. The effect on scoring position to get a field goal is just ridiculous. And so the end zone shrinkage becomes a casualty of moving the field goal. Maybe the end zone shrinkage was the original goal, but moving the field goal post is a beautiful justification for it. Why move the field goal post? There was one reason given for player safety, because it's an obstruction. Now, we've seen the backlash. This is a massive change to the game, massive change to gameplay.
Yeah.
I, to the best of my recollection, believe that the Players Association in past years have provided the CFL with solutions to improve player safety that would have been far less disruptive, that didn't receive anything close to the attention and an initiative that moving the goalpost has now received and been actioned upon with. So that's not consistent at all with the approach that the league is taking. Now, they don't want players getting terribly injured. They spend a lot of money on rehabilitation. As a member of the Players Association, I know we've sat down and we've talked about player safety, and they've made changes. They've made good changes, but there's always a cost evaluation of any change. Does it impact gameplay? Does it impact the bottom line? So it's not to say that they're callous. I'm not saying that the league doesn't care about player safety. Obviously they do. They don't want their star athletes getting injured and missing games, if you want to be just, talk about self-interest. But they don't want guys, I think, getting terribly hurt. But if changes to player safety involve major disruptions to the game or cost a lot of money, in my experience, it's been really difficult to get attention on those particular issues when the Players Association have thought they've had good ideas to address those things. So it's interesting, the goalpost moving for player safety, when I don't know how many documented injuries there have been involving a goalpost in the last 20 years. I think I remember maybe one guy running into it. I think he was fine. I think we all thought it was kind of funny. I do know that players use the goalpost. A savvy receiver uses the goalpost to pick a guy. And that happens a lot more often than the opposite, which is a savvy safety hiding behind the
Well,
goal.
that's the offensive equivalent to the defender using the sideline as an extra defender. You can use it as a rub down there, and any creative coach, and I've talked to Mark Trestman and a few, they said that's exactly what we talk about. So I don't buy that either. And as Mike O'Shea told my son, I played in a time when when there was no pads on the goalposts, and I never saw one person run into the goalpost. There was no padding on the goalpost back in the day. In terms of hitting the goalpost, I saw a pass from Dunnigan to Gerald Elfin in the 94 playoffs that's going around line. It hit the crossbar. And of course, Cody Fajardo in 2019. But you're not going to see, it's not enough to make the change. So then why move the goalpost?
Well, and that's the other argument, talking about Cody Fajardo's pass that hit the crossbar. One team lost, one team won, and It was exciting. It's part of the field. So the position, they've said it's going to open up more routes for touchdowns. The middle of the field is going to be targeted more. And I've looked at the numbers that they've provided. I am unconvinced that there's going to be a significant increase. Will there probably be some modest increase in targeting of that area? Probably, but the middle of the field is the least targeted area of the field in general. You see it in the CFL, you see it in the NFL, and many of our plays start from the hash because we're going to one sideline or the other. So we're going to somehow open up a magical box of more plays. Well, no, I looked at the numbers, and if you think that the change from the NFL, their middle field targeting in the open field to the red zone, the difference should be the natural difference in the CFL, if not for the position of the goalpost, then we might see a 3% increase in middle of field targeting in absolute terms. So that would be about 10% more middle of the field targeting in relative terms. But that would just mean that we're not targeting the edges quite so much. How much will that actually increase completion rate? It's even lower. So one category of pass, you're going to increase by 3% in absolute terms, 10% in relative terms, at the expense of passes targeting at other portions of the field. Their claimed increase in completions is really doubtful, because those would have to come from somewhere else. How many new completions are you creating with this? I don't think there's very many at all. And then why?
Peter, can I stop you for a second and piggyback that, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Peter, when you're and I've coached a lot of youth football, when you're starting out and when you've been coached, especially as a receiver, when I played, and I always taught my son, when you catch the ball, don't go to the middle. That's where all the players are. And if you catch the ball in the middle, you want to get to the edge as fast as you can, because there's less players out there. These dummies, that say, well, 80%'s to the left and 70%'s to the right. That's because that's where the fewest amount of people are, and it's the easiest.
That's football.
That's football. Number one. Number two, commissioner's numbers, not mine. He opens his press conference by saying, this is the highest. We are averaging 54. Actually, he didn't open this. This was released by the league. 54% or 54 points a game is what the CFL is averaging. Its highest total since 2008, and 9 points more than what the NFL is averaging the game we're going to. Okay. Yeah. Whether you want to admit it or not. He said the middle of the field will give us about 60 touchdowns a season. Over 81 games is 3/4 of a touchdown, which is about 4.4 points more for equaling touchdowns. But you're taking the equivalent of conservatively 2 makeable, if not 3 makeable field goals off the board, and a lot of rouges. So once again, there's double speak, Peter. Are we trying to score more and make it more exciting, or are we trying to have a lot of turnovers on downs, pooch punts, and incomplete passes over the middle?
Well, let's go back to the first item you talked about, the 54 points per game, 9 more than the NFL. Where is the imperative to drastically change our game? We're at a modern historic high for points. You could call it a modern CFL scoring renaissance. That's how I've put it.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful era for our game. It's more exciting than ever. And we're going to just turn it upside down to try to make it a little bit more exciting. We want to make one zone of the field 3% more exciting, which is going to add a net of 0.75% more excitement per game. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. There's zero mandate for this. There's no lack of excitement in this league. Scoring is much higher than the NFL, and this is going to reduce scoring. So when you look at why move the goalpost, it doesn't stand up. What we're going through is certainly not worth any benefit that they might, the turmoil in the CFL, the disunity, the discord, the anger, the betrayal. None of that is worth the smidgen of improvement that they might be imagining with moving the goalpost out. And what does it do? It's vandalism. It's our beautiful, iconic field. What makes the CFL different? That goalpost in its original position with a single scoring plane is pure football. The NFL moved their goalpost back about 50 years ago.
74, something like that, yeah.
So, okay, 51 years ago, they moved their goalpost back. We've kept it on the goal line. We have a single scoring plane. The ball crosses that line, you're scoring, whether it's a field goal, whether it's a touchdown, or if you've scored a rouge. If you advance the ball beyond that plane and the opposing team fails to return it back into the field of play, then you score. And now we're going to have two scoring. We're going to have the goal line for touchdowns, and then we're going to have the end line for field goals, and then rouges can only be scored in between the two. It really violates some of the core principles of the game. And even though it's going to jump over to another point, let's talk about what is the game of football. It's a battle for field position. That is what football is. It's a battle for field position. The line of scrimmage is a real thing. And I take a terrific exception to what the NFL has done with their kickoff, because it's a complete violation of the principles of football by lining up players on the wrong side of the line of scrimmage. That breaks the laws of football. That's not football anymore. The kickoff in the NFL is not a football play. Not a football play anymore. I don't know what it is. It's the worst, most gimmicky thing, and they're going to change it back eventually because it just does not stand up. It's going to go back. So mark my words, the NFL wonky kickoff where everyone's lined up offside is going to go back because it violates football, because football is a battle for field position and the line of scrimmage is a fact. Mm-hmm. When you think about that and you consider how the rouge works and the various ways to score a rouge, you find that there's actually a very legitimate way to score points. It very rightfully rewards the team that gains the field position, that fights and wins that battle for field position, and it punishes the team that fails in defending their field position. It's a beautiful part of our game. And if we were wanting to change our game to add excitement, why not add more rouge scoring opportunities where there's a couple of situations right now where a rouge is scored, but we don't award it. When there is an interception in the end zone that's downed in the end zone and the clock is stopped with the ball in the end zone, and a fumble recovery, again, when the clock is stopped with the ball in the end zone, that should be a rouge. And then you got to make a smart football decision if you're on the defense, what you're going to do with football. But that's another day.
No. But let's stay right here. Let's stay right here. Yeah. I ramble more than you, but it gets me distracted, and I'm more easily distracted than you. So I just want to stay on this train, okay? The rouge. I agree with what you're saying about the rouge. But in a give and take world, if they were to adjust the rouge, okay? Why did they have... Okay, once again, double speak from the CFL. If 7 of the 9 teams are not making money, if they're losing money, nobody asked this question of the commissioner. Who's paying to move the fields and the goalposts? Who's doing that? Is it easy to move goalposts? Is it cheap to move goalposts? Is it cheap to who's paying for the fields? And we didn't have to make the change. And then you wouldn't affect amateur football. As far as the goalposts, here's what you do. If you wanted to do it, I'm not saying it, but if the ball isn't playable, meaning if it flies out of the end zone and you can't catch it and can't play it, there is no rouge. And
no, you lost. Ballsy, you've lost me there. You've lost me. You can't give these people an inch.
Okay.
They're maniacs.
No, but I don't want to, but my point is this. If the rouge was their argument is the rouge, the Grey Cup is going to end on a rouge.
I hope it does. I'd love for the Grey Cup to end on a rouge. That would be fantastic.
Love it.
I like inject that into my veins. A Grey Cup won on a walk-off rouge. I would love nothing more. Let's talk about the business sense of these decisions, and then we'll get back into picking them apart. But the business sense. So how is this going to make us more money?
Yeah.
The NFL is a juggernaut. They make billions and billions of dollars. And so it's very natural for us up here, and especially if you're a CFL owner who's very sick of losing $400,000 to $2 million a year, give or take, and then maybe you make a little bit of money one year and you feel like you're always losing money. So you're looking, how can I make a bunch of money with this team I've got? And it's natural. You look at the US and you see they're making tens of billions. What if we could only get 7% of that? Well, that just might not be there, because there has been a revolving door of professional leagues in the US who all want to be the number 2 league to the NFL. And it is the world's most football crazy nation, and they all fail. The one thing that they all have in common, every single US pro football league that is not the NFL fails. They all fail. That whatever percent of the NFL market that we think we can get, it's not there for us. We're fooling ourselves. To the extent that the CFL has a market in the US, and it absolutely does, it's because we are different. There is a sports fan in the US who likes a quirky, different thing. He wears a Div 3 college t-shirt. He likes to tune in when there's an NAIA game on. He wears the defunct team's ball cap. He follows the odd niche sports. The CFL is the quirky, different option in the US, and there's a lot of people who like that. It might not be the market that we'd like to have, but that's the market that we have. And you know what? Weird Al sells out concerts coast to coast all the time. I went to a Weird Al concert actually at the Budweiser stage. There used to be the Wilson Amphitheater in Toronto. Funny story. The lady in front of me had her bag searched, and the security pulled out a library book and a box of organic raspberries. Which
that is hilarious.
That's what you'd expect someone to have going into one of those. But that's so in the States. In Canada, a red-blooded Canadian male tough guy likes his CFL football. In the US, that guy's watching the NFL. And I don't know how you're going to convince that guy to watch Canadian football, in a large group. Now, a lot of guys do. A lot of guys just can't get enough football. We'll turn it on because we're playing in June and July and August. But we have a market because we're different, and it attracts attention because we're different. All this, the Canadian football's on. It's different. I'm going to watch. We have a 55-yard line. We have the goalposts in front of the end zone, 3 downs, 12 men, wide field, lots of Canadians. We got the rouge. These are the things. The clock rule is different, not for long, but it's very visually different. We're erasing almost all of the visual differences. I don't think that's smart. We are removing our differentiation, something that sets us apart. We're not some wannabe. We're not the next XFL or UFL or USFL or Arena, whatever. We're not. We're not. Well, I guess Arena is a lot different. That's a lot different. They're very well differentiated, and they also do poorly. So there's not appetite in the US for another pro football league. So why would we erase our differences, the things that do make us more noticeable, that make us stand out in that market?
So why do it? So yeah, that's right. So why do it?
And that's, again, you got to put your tinfoil hat.
There's only one. It's not
back on the head.
But it's not a tinfoil hat, and it's not a conspiracy theory, Peter, my good friend. When nobody will answer your questions, when nobody gets asked the question, I brought you on because not only do I respect you, but nobody that has any substance in the league right now will come on and talk about this. Maybe there's been a bunch of NDAs signed. Maybe there's lots that they can't say. That could be. But why can't the commissioner, when I've asked him 4 times, come on and answer hey, commissioner, how are we making money? What are we doing? Here's what it is. Let's call it what it is. You're going through trouble with your wife, and the problem is you're drinking and you're not coming home, and you're drinking and you're not coming home, and that's why you got troubles, and that's why things are in dire straits. But instead of going to counseling and AA and looking after yourself and looking after your house and what the problem is, you think you're going to solve the problem by buying a bigger house or moving into a different neighborhood, and that'll make it happy, and that'll make everything good again. And it's never been the game, Pete. And you know that. It's marketing, it's messaging, it's promotion, it's stats that don't work, it's streaming, it's websites that are updated, both by your broadcaster TSN and by your own site. Like, it's all of those things, but they don't want to look in-house. It's like not drilling down on the Canadians like Peter Dyakowski and doing all that stuff. It's all of those things. And that isn't Stuart Johnston's fault. So now they're looking for a quick fix. And here's the other thing we got to address, okay? And I'll let you ramble because I'm rambling here, but I'm on a roll, I feel. Here's the other thing. I saw a lot about this online. Well, now they made this move so all the fields can easily fit into, if they wanted to go American expansion. I did some digging, Peter Dyakowski, today, because this means a lot to me. I found one for sure stadium that is in the existing UFL, and I use that as a template because that's the other league running down there. I found one stadium because it used to be the baseball stadium in Arlington. That's the only one that could fit a Canadian 65-yard wide field. I went to 4 years of college at the Alara Center in Grand Forks watching my kid. Wouldn't fit there. Watched the Nebraska Cornhuskers game live against UND. Wouldn't fit there. Boise State wouldn't fit there. Montana won't fit there. This new Canadian field isn't going to fit in the United States fields, okay? And we're not going to change fields 3 or 4 times up here. We're going to do it one time. So it's not like they're going to play for 3 years at 65-yard fields. So it goes back to what I said. Where's the TV contract? He should have said, we're doing this, and here's TSN. But he comes from TSN, which is almost broke. There was talk about selling it, and he knows they're not going to get that much money from TSN. So they're going to go Fox and DAZN, which has UFL rights, and they're going to do an expansion. That's what I believe. There's my tinfoil hat.
Well, if that's the case, then the next thing I want to talk about, what is the other explanation for shortening the field? So we're going to eliminate the 55-yard line. Mm-hmm. One of those identifying marks that makes a Canadian football field, the 55-yard line. I'm told we have to eliminate it because we want to shorten the distance between the goal lines so that we'll have more scoring. Again, we're at 54 points per game, a high for recent history, I believe just about or close to a 20-year high, and 9 points above the NFL. So why are we shrinking the field to lose the 10 yards? Well, then we can shorter drive, score more. Well, what if you just move the kickoff point back by 10 yards? Don't you accomplish the exact same thing? Mm-hmm. With none of the angst, none of the division, none of the anger, none of the betrayal, just like I'm talking about with the benefits of the goalpost. But there's no benefit. With the goalpost, you can talk about the middle of the field targeting, and maybe one day a particularly careless player will not run into the goalpost and his life will not be impacted by a potential injury. You can, make that stretch. But there's nothing for removing the 50-yard line. There is no explanation for removing the 50-yard line and condensing the field, because almost the entire benefit of doing that can be accomplished by moving the kickoff back. You could just by the stroke of a pen, just like they've done with all of this. And I think it actually ought to be consulted with the rules committee and the health and safety committee, but it's just a very simple change. Move the kickoff back 10 yards. You're going to improve the average drive start position by about 10 yards. I say about because there's actually unintended consequences of every little change, even something as subtle as that. There are unintended consequences. So let's pause that. We're going to remember we're talking about the field size, but let's just go back to the goalposts. Back in 2022, we shrunk the hashes. And so now, because most of our plays start from one hash or another, we're now right in front of the goalpost when we're down in the red zone, when we used to be way over on one hash or another. Now, we can look at the statistics, shrinking the hash marks. Now, again, correlation is not causation, but I think it's fair to say shrinking the hash marks probably contributed to this recent increase in scoring. And I thought, and I still think it looks kind of dumb with the narrow hashes, and I don't like it, but I can live with the narrow hashes, and it increased the scoring, probably that's one of the reasons we have more scoring. So they shrank the hashes. We've got more scoring. Obviously, it's targeting to the now wider sides that we've created.
Right.
But you've got the offense always lining up in the red zone, right in front of the goalpost. So that's an unintended consequence of shrinking the hashes. We've now made the goalpost loom larger, but scoring is up. So that's a trade-off. So now we're trying to correct for that unintended consequence of that other rule change that by and large has done what it was supposed to do. So wanted to get that out, but let's go back to the field size. There is nothing that eliminating the 55-yard line does. There's no facility in the country that needs to have that eliminated. And if you look at the history of the CFL accommodating smaller surfaces, if you look at the history of other leagues, Major League Baseball has a plethora of differently sized parks. And it's big differences too. It's not little differences. There's very different sizes. You can look at the stats and games and you can guess what park they're in. If you look at a season where the stats and see where they all rank up. Premier League football, the other football, soccer, I'm embarrassed I've called it football, soccer, Premier League soccer in England, you look at the field sizes or pitch sizes that they got, they vary greatly. Here in the CFL, we accommodate easily. Right now, two teams with slightly wonky end zones in Toronto and Montreal. It's not a problem. And before they got rid of that beautiful, lush grass in Edmonton, they had the track and they had a little corner clipped. Never caused a problem. We used to have 25-yard end zones and they shortened it. I don't think they should have. Now that we're looking at this, we should have 25-yard end zones in some facilities, the bigger ones. Now that they've got the turf in Commonwealth, let's get 25-yard end zones. McMahon, 25-yard end zones. Why not? You'd have more scoring. It's more historic. It's more consistent with the game. They say I hate change. No, I just hate terrible changes that don't work. I'd love to change to 25-yard end zones. That would make it more Canadian, but that's what they don't want. So why does every single change go towards the NFL rules and not the other? And every single one of them.
Yeah. And so why is it?
I need some tinfoil.
Yeah. No.
I need more tinfoil, Ballsy. But
I got some here. But here, I want to go to here. And this is one of the main reasons I had you on, because you can speak to it and I can't. My very first year as the play-by-play announcer of the Saskatchewan Roughriders training camp in Saskatoon was historically delayed because of a mini labor dispute, because as the story goes, they took a hard run at the ratio at that time. I wasn't privy to the boardroom and stuff, but
Are you talking about 2019 or?
Well, there was 2022 at the start of training camp. It was delayed. It was delayed. The last CBA, it was delayed because they took a run at, we dropped
our strike.
Yes. And we dropped Canadians again. So here's my point. Not one time in all of this, in all of his talk, whether it was Sunday, Monday, whether it was all the radio interviews he's done, whether it's the TV interviews he's done, he said today, or the podcast interviews, he said today, we're committed to the 3-down game, everything that makes it Canadiana, the 50, the 63 or 65-yard field, all that stuff. He called it the 5-yard punt rule, but if you're a commissioner, you probably should know it's no yards, but whatever, neither here nor there. Empty suits that don't know. But here's the kicker. Not one time, Peter Dyakowski, did he ever say Canadian players. He didn't say, I listen for a living, believe it or not, even though I ramble. And I pick up on people's words. Not one time did this master messenger ever say Canadian players. We are committed to Canadian players. That, I'm a father, granted, I'm biased, but I've long been a defender of Canadian players, including yourself.
Well, it's vital for the CFL to have Canadian players, and a commissioner must be able to articulate that. I hope that our reporters who have access to him put that to him in very plain terms and ask him to clarify his position on that, because if that's something that he has a difficulty saying, maybe it slipped his mind. I don't think so. If you're trying to put people's minds at ease about retaining the Canadian identity of the game, that should be one of the first things on your lips. So I hope that if we do have any reporters listening who have access, who are going to be interviewing the commissioner, I hope they put that question to him directly, and we'll see how he answers it. That's a very important thing, and I would like him to very clearly say that he believes there will always be a place for Canadians of tremendous importance in the CFL, and not
in your opinion, in your previous experience, do the upper brass of the league, owners, whatever, do they want Canadians in their league? Is it a nuisance to have Canadians on the roster? When I talk to coaches, and there are a lot of great Canadian coaches, but Mark Trestman, I love talking to him. He said that was the beauty of the game. If Peter Dyakowski went down, I'm just paraphrasing. If Peter Dyakowski went down in a game in Saskatchewan and we're flying back to Montreal, I'm already thinking, okay, how do if I play an American here, then I got to move a Canadian here, and I got to bring Waldo on the roster, and I got to figure it all out. Mm-hmm. And he said that was the beauty, not only in the season, but how you construct your team. That's what he said. But
I think a lot of the coaches embrace it, especially the Canadian. Obviously the Canadian coaches. I think all the coaches embrace it. Most of them do, but I'm sure some find it difficult. And I know there's been a vocal GM from time to time who's complained about it. It makes his job a little bit harder. Well, football is a tough job. My job was hard. I had a big 300-pound guy in front of me who was really angry, who wanted to go get to the quarterback, and I had to stop him, and he could go whatever direction he wanted. My job's hard. Your job's hard. You're getting paid a lot of money. I don't care. That's the job. Do it. And I think for most of the personnel people, they don't have that attitude. I don't think I hope that's not the majority. There's been a few vocal ones, that I've heard speak in the media on it. It's like complaining about the weather. However, differently from the weather, it can be negotiated, and it can be attacked in collective bargaining. And we've seen, and it's no secret. I'm not going to talk about inner workings, and I'm not going to talk about what people have said behind closed doors. I'll talk about public positions and things that are known, and it's been reported that the league has come for concessions on the Canadian ratio. That's what's being reported. That's not me talking about anything secret.
Isn't that double speak, Peter, though? More double speak, because here's what I hear. We've never had, and it's true. It's well known. Canadian players have never been better. This is the greatest era of Canadian receivers in the history of the Canadian Football League. And I've been around 47 years watching it to see it. So we have greater Canadian talent than we ever have. More guys playing NCAA, more guys playing in the NFL that are Canadian. Okay. So how the heck why are we reducing Canadians? Why isn't there more Canadians?
Well, that's a great question in the CFL of all places. And some people will say, well, there's more Canadians than ever who are succeeding in the NCAA and in the NFL. Do we need the Canadian ratio? And that's a very seductive line of reasoning. But the fact is, the economics of being a small country next to a huge country that produces really good football players at a tremendous rate, there is a fire hose of American talent available. You could fill a whole CFL roster for well below the minimum salary and have a really good team doing it. And so that's something you have to be very careful about, because we have a limited supply. And even though they're very, very good, we've got a limited supply, limited availability of Canadian players. So if you don't have spots that are expressly set aside, and the funny thing is, it's actually, there's a certain number of Americans that you're allowed on a team. And we always think about it the opposite, because of the economic pressures, it actually works in the reverse. So if you don't have a certain number of spots set aside for Canadian players, you just won't fill those spots with Canadians, because the available candidates are going to be 15-1, 20-1, 40-1 Americans. And you just won't find that talent. The ratio is a beautiful thing because it makes you find that talent. Look at Chris Van Zyl. He was a defensive lineman of decent skill, but he wasn't going to have a long pro career as a defensive lineman because he was naturally an offensive tackle, and they didn't discover that until 2 or 3 years into his CFL career, and they moved him, and then he developed, and then he became lineman of the year. And you talk to the defensive ends who played against him, he was the best. It wasn't a courtesy vote. It wasn't he got a little bit of extra votes because he was Canadian and we just loved seeing a good Canadian tackle, because you don't see as many top Canadian tackles. No, he was the best, and he never would have been developed into a tackle if the ratio hadn't forced there to be a need to do that. He would have just been one more defensive lineman who wasn't quite the right fit. So that's the ratio. But hold on, they haven't come for it yet, Ballsy. Wait until next year or the year after when they're coming hard for the ratio.
That's what I mean. So this is where
that's going to happen. But let's just talk about this affront to our Canadian sensibilities that's just happened, which is them taking out all of these outwardly distinctive items. They're going to come for the heart and soul of the league soon enough. The players, we don't know that for sure. It's speculation. Although if you were a gambler, you would have to put money on it. But let's talk about though these changes again. So we talked about shortening the field. The only reason is to fit the field into facilities in other countries in a significant way. If you needed to do a one-off in Halifax to fit into the Wanderers grounds, you're just gonna have a stadium with smaller. You'll find a way to fit in. By the way, look at the Wanderers grounds. You can do some pretty heavy duty landscaping, and you can fit a CFL stadium in there.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with it. That has nothing to do with it.
It could be done. We would find a way. You would do a one-off little end zones to do something like that, and there'd be no problem because it'd be equal for both sides playing in there. It's equal. It's just like in the MLB when you've got the differently sized ballparks. It's equal. Now, the team that's at home in the small ballpark is going to build their roster around guys who will be good at home games in that ballpark. But generally speaking, it's a very slight advantage. So that's shrinking the field. There's no reason for it unless you had ulterior motives. That's the only explanation. There is no other reason to get rid of our iconic 55-yard line unless there was more to it. Otherwise, you just move the kickoff back. And that one thing, if anyone is listening, if you want to take one thing away, that puts to lie everything else that's being said about how these are benign changes. It's just a one-time thing. There is no reason to remove the 55-yard line unless there was a phase 2. That all you have to do is move the kickoff back. That's all you have to do to get any of the benefit of eliminating
the 55-yard line wasn't hurting anything. The 55-yard line wasn't hurting anything. It was hurting nothing.
And so that everything else that they've said, if they cannot address it, and they can't, there's no way to address it. If they can't address that and explain that, then it casts doubt on everything else that they say, excusing these other changes. So the 55-yard line is the smoking gun. So if you want to put on a tinfoil hat, I guess my tinfoil hat's on because that is the smoking gun. Let's talk. We've talked about the goalposts. We talked briefly about the end zones. I'm for a 25-yard end zone wherever we can fit them in. You want more excitement, you want more scoring. Let's make the end zones deeper. This making 15 yards is ridiculous. We talked about the goal line. Let's talk about the play clock. The play clock's going to backfire because it just lets you kill the clock. It'll make its game, even though the 20-second clock isn't actually 20 seconds because of the way it gets blown and everything. But still, 35 seconds mean you can kill 35 game seconds now. With the 20-second clock, you can only kill 20 game seconds. So whatever you can say about the flow, if you care about excitement, you have just reduced the amount of football in the final 3 minutes.
Now I'll stop you. I don't read it the same way as you may. Once again, you're the smartest man in Canada. AJ Ouellette gets tackled. It's at the 38-yard line. He gets tackled at the 40. And as soon as he goes, there's a minute and 30 to go in the game. He gets tackled after a 2-yard run. The whistle goes, and now the 35-second clock starts going. So it wouldn't be truly 35 seconds, but you would instruct your team, as I read it, to get to the line of scrimmage. So the ref sets the ball quicker. So now you have 28 seconds or 20. So you're chipping away at that. I agree with that. I don't think it's a true 35 seconds, but you're right. You can eat more time off, and it's going to take away from our 57 and 3-minute league, which we've always said.
Yeah. So that's if you're in a situation where you can take a victory knee, that now occurs sooner. Yeah. So the game is now over sooner. We've reduced the amount of football in the final 3 minutes. But beyond that, I think it's dumb. If we're trading, if we have to give them something, do the clock. The clock's for the quarterback anyways. I don't care as much about the clock. But it is dumb because the 20
who's got a 35-second play clock? I'll tell you, the UFL is a 35-second play clock.
Ha!
Hey, the CBA is up, and I'll do some more tinfoil hat stuff. The CBA is up in 2029 for the CFL, unless a TV contract needs to be negotiated and it opens. Here's a question for you that I'd like to ask you without going behind closed doors. If you're to dismantle, because my son goes, Dad, could they just get rid of Canadian? Can they just? Because I've been talking to him about this. Okay, his dad. Okay, we talk. He goes, Dad, can they really just get rid of Canadians if it's a CFL? Can they really just break it? I said, well, I don't know about that, Ethan, but I think if, let's say, they just disbanded the league and started another league called the CFL, the Continental Football League. I'm just making stuff up here. Then I think they could, because it's just a new league and we start with new rules. Now, am I way off base with that? Like, how could you eliminate the Canadians? Like, how could you if you did?
So you can't, an employer cannot, that's, going back into the old days of how labor law developed. You can't just pretend to disincorporate your company and then give it a new name and start it up again and fire your union. You can't do that in Canada. And a CFL with substantially the same owners running a football business, it doesn't matter what the season schedule is. If they're running a football business from the same place of business with the same ownership, you can't. So that is one conspiracy theory that we can put to bed here. That can't be done. That's not legal in Canada. Under Canadian labor law, you could not do that. So that's good. That's good there. But
okay, good to know.
We're not out of the woods, because you are right that the collective agreement could. There is that early opening clause. So your theory on the UFL alignment starts looking stronger and stronger the more we talk, which is that's disturbing. I don't know why we would hitch our wagon to a failing American Football League. And we know it's failing because 100% of non-NFL American pro leagues fail. That is a hard law of science and football business right there.
So how would now I'm glad that's raised my heart a little bit, because to me, the rules are important. Everything that we've said, I'm a traditionalist, but Canadian Football League, it's Canadian. The Canadians in the Football League. Take my son out of the equation. Put Ryder Varga. Pick a bunch of Stavros Katsatonis, my favorite safety in the league. Like, let's just pick. I want Canadians in the Canadian Football League. So that what you said kind of made okay. Good. They just can't do that. What I said, because I have no clue. I'm a podcaster now. So thanks for that. But say we keep the tinfoil hat on and it becomes an international league again, like our national, like we had American expansion. How do we pay how do we pay everybody fairly? Like, what do we do?
So that you're getting into really interesting questions. I think it'd be a terrible idea to merge the leagues, but say the owners did it, how would the players at that time confront it? you've got a whole episode just to game plan that out. I hope it never comes to it, but you could see some billionaire, and apparently there's one involved in the UFL, wants to throw a ton of money at it, and we've seen just how our board of governors can grasp at something shiny, especially if there's a lot of money maybe involved. Hopefully it never comes out, but there'd be a ton of stuff you'd have to do. Let's talk about back to the here and now.
Yeah.
The here and now of these awful rule changes. So the clock, I think it's bad. I think it reduces final 3 minutes excitement. I don't care as much. If that's all they did, I probably would have tweeted once. I'd say this is stupid, but I wouldn't. I've actually probably had more, and I'm not on my phone all the time. I have work to do, but I've probably tweeted more in the last couple of days than I have in the last couple of months because I care. I care a lot.
Me too.
And if all they did was mess up the clock, I probably wouldn't care that much. It would be in the category of the hashes. The hashes look silly now. It's not right, but I can live with that. The clock is the same. Switching the sidelines, so they're now going to have the players not on the same sidelines. I liked being on the same sideline because you have a little bit more interaction with the guys, and there's like a fraternal connection, and you rib each other, and it's fun if you're both going off at the same time. You can poke a guy a bit more, and it's I had more fun than anyone playing. I love being on the same sideline because it just gave you that much more interaction with the other guys. But whatever. I do know that Hamilton, for instance, and I believe Ottawa too, planned their stadium. Planned their stadium around having the video ads all along the one sideline to be in the broadcast and to sell their ads for more money. So when I hear about the unanimous board of governors again, I think about all this stuff. Well, you've designed your stadium to maximize your exposure, and you've sold those particular ad zones based on the value that they're providing for the sponsor, because he's going to be midfield and on the TV, and now you're going to have the whole sideline splitting them. You're still going to have the video ads, and they're just going to be displaced further to each end of the field. They're not going to have as much prominence in the broadcast. If I'm a guy paying for an ad package, I'm just like the season seat holder who's at the back of the end zone now, who's going to be 10 yards further from the action. I'm going to ask for a discount. I can't imagine that the affected stadiums loved that, but they all went along with it in the end, which again adds to my theory. They got the last yes they needed and then rushed this thing out before people could play.
That's probably the way to go.
Put the guys on the other sides. I don't care about the ads as much. I like the money the ads bring in. I don't like the ads for the sake of ads. But it's good to have the money coming in, pays the players. You got to make money. It is a business, but put them on the different sidelines. That's fine. Do the play clock. That's fine. But everything else,
but all of this stuff, Peter, once again, it comes back to this. How are we making money? Who's paying for the changes? And will this bring a younger demographic? Because I've heard, we're in a small box, we're deteriorating, nobody's coming to the games. Do you think a bunch of 30 to 20 to 30-something-year-old guys, girls, are going to rush to the stadium because we've got the benches on the different sides? It's a 35 play clock, and the
benches are supposed to improve substitutions and goal line scenarios. And I guess the thing is, it's not a competitive thing because both teams are equally disadvantaged. And over the course of the season, you will be hurt by a long substitution just as much as you're helped by your opponent having to do long substitutions. It's not a competitiveness issue. They're just saying that execution in the red zone is not as crisp because of these long substitutions. That's seems like a bit of a stretch, but fine. Do that with the sidelines if you want to put your stamp on it. I'm the commissioner now, and I'm going to do something big. Throw your weight around a little bit, do that, but don't ruin the whole game. Don't gut us. Don't take the 55-yard line. Don't make the end zones look ridiculous and move the goalposts and take away the rouge.
So I'm not going to keep it too much longer, but I'm going to just.
I got to go to bed. This is past my bedtime, Ballsy. I got to go I have my powders every night. So I have my shaker cup. Yeah. And I put in cracked black pepper. I put in Alberta elk antler velvet. I have my omega-3 salmon oil. I have turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, oregano, beetroot powder, a little bit of bee pollen, a couple pinches of saffron, and nobody knows about saffron, by the way, but it's just phenomenal. I'm a big saffron guy, big time saffron guy. We're going to put some chia seeds in there. We've got some creatine in there. We have some collagen protein powder in there. We've got some MSM, which is methyl sulfonylmethane, which is that's supposed to be good for your old joints. We've got some glucosamine that goes in there. We've got lysine, glycine, and arginine. You shake it up. It's the very a bit of cocoa powder too. Cocoa powder goes in. It's a very bitter mix, but it's great for you. You chew up a couple cloves of garlic. That goes down the hatch. Slonk a couple eggs, and then I have my vitamin C and my vitamin D, my zinc and magnesium. What else do we have? Vitamin E, vitamin B complex, CoQ10. I feel like I'm missing something, but anyways, so I got to go do that. I got to go do that, and I have to be in bed by 10. So we're running out of time here.
So let's get done here. So let me ask you this. I got to go to the Walmart and get some dog food before it closes. I'm 2 hours back yet. So that's what he's doing and what I'm doing. Maybe some chips and some Diet Pepsi. Okay. So once again, a lot of unanswered questions. You're open to, you can be a conspiracy theorist when nobody answers your questions. You're doing a great job. I like the input, and it's made me think about a few things. But at the end of the day, do you agree with me that this isn't being like, we're changing this so that we can present this to America? That's what I feel. Do you agree with that?
None of the changes go in the other direction. If it was change for the sake of change, if it's change for the sake of trying things to make the game better or more exciting, we'd be talking about a 25-yard end zone. It would at least be on the table. There's a lot of other ideas that you could be talking about that would take the game closer to its roots and not closer to the United States, which, by the way, I like the United States. I like the USA. I love my time there in school. I visit a lot. I go down for business. I have very sharp elbows. They're very, very pointy, but they're not pointed upwards.
Yeah.
But this is the Canadian game. I'm a Canadian, patriotic Canadian nationalist, monarchist. I love my country. I do not want to lose the Canadian game, and that means a 55-yard line. My CFL field has a 55-yard line, and there is no explanation for these changes, including the elimination of the 55-yard line, that's reasonable and plausible without entertaining some of the conspiracy theories which you've introduced here. So that's where I'm at. Do I hate change? I change a lot of things all the time. Could we change the play clock and do the sideline thing to improve substitutions and game flow? I'm open to that. Could we change the end zones to be 25 yards long to increase scoring and go back to where they were prior to 82 or whatever they brought it up?
Yeah. I'm
open to that too. But I'm not open to taking away the 55-yard line, the goalpost, the end zone bigness, the rouge. That's not CFL football. That's not Canadian.
Bottom line is this: why are you flushing the most storied league, unique league down the toilet? Why are you dropping a bomb on it?
The only explanation is if there's a pursuit of a big time payday. That's the only reasonable, logical thing. I can't imagine the Board of Governors want the abuse that they're getting. It's got to be there has to be something that makes it worthwhile.
And our Canadian
explain it.
And I thought I was thinking about this too, lastly. I was thinking, can our Canadian, and it ties into what you were saying about player safety, can our Canadian game make it on an American field? Well, and it has to be an American field because they will not fit the field that they're talking about in American stadiums that they are talking about. I even looked up that where the Rams played, the St. Louis team. Where do they go? Raymond James, whatever the stadium was where the Rams played in St. Louis. It wouldn't fit a Canadian field. You'd have nowhere for the sidelines.
Well, you know what a great way to reduce your starting payroll by 8.5% is? Go from 12 to 11 men. You're going to save 8.5% on your starters.
But even at that. So let's go 11 men and let's go motion, like the motion part of the game. Can you think? When I was, you were a lineman, okay? And I linemen are athletes, okay? But my kid was considered, in football, they say that's an athletic position, right? Skilled position, sorry. So he was a receiver. And I sent his tape everywhere in the States, and I sent it to North Dakota, and I sent it, Weston Dressler helped me out getting to North Dakota. And they said, hey, kid looks good, but he looks slow because he's on a Canadian field because it's a bigger field. You could put a bunch of people on the field and they look slower when it's a bigger field. Okay. When you're on an American field, it's like putting a bunch of fish in a fish bowl and they're all swimming around instead of an Olympic-sized pool, so to speak. Or
do you know what game looks really slow and boring?
Yeah.
Soccer.
Yeah,
and
it does.
Billions of people love it.
No, I know, but here's where I'm going with this. I don't think motion works in like player safety. Imagine the guys running at a top speed, tight field, the collisions. Like it's not going. There's a reason why the NFL hasn't gone to motion. They've stolen our RPOs. They've done all of that stuff, which started in Canada. The point after attempt, one of the greatest rule changes ever in football, to take a nothing play to something. I love that it started in the Canadian Football League. The NFL's doing more parallel motion, and then at the snap they turn up field, but there's nothing where they're in full speed down the field. I don't think it works in the American game. That's another thing to consider.
Well, you know, they're going to keep chipping away at it. The one thing that's really clear is this is just a first step. This is everything that you could get, that you could say, you can contend. Not that I agree, but the league, you know, obviously is of the opinion that they do not need to go to the Players Association. It doesn't affect the collective agreement. They do not have to go to the Rules Committee, and they do not have to go to the Joint Health and Safety Committee for these changes. So they did everything they could without having to do any of those things. That makes me really suspicious that we're not going to see more in the off season when you're going to have Rules Committee and when you're going to have health and safety. So we're going to see more in the off season, and then there's going to be more to come, I think, if we have an early collective bargaining, which again, this makes it look much more likely that's going to happen. Again, there's no explanation for getting rid of the 55-yard line that holds water that they've provided. So that's why more conspiracy theories and the tinfoil hat is the only way that you could justify what the league is going through now. This isn't going to go away. You know, people aren't just going to be upset for a couple of days and forget about it. This is big. The 55-yard line is one of those identifying marks of Canadian football. It's not going away. Anyways, I've got to go make all my powders and have all my nutritional supplements, and I got to get to bed here.
Yeah, okay, so do me a favor. Since people have been watching this and they're going to be on the edge of their seat, before you drink it, take a picture and tweet it out on your Twitter feed, okay? At Peter Dyakowski. I'm serious, because I want to see what this is.
It's like this brown, sludgy, powdery water, and there's all these little bits in it, but it's fantastic. I've been refining this mix for 15 years, and I keep adding and taking out ingredients. People say I don't like change. I introduced beetroot powder just like 3 years ago. That's new. That was a change. We weren't doing the beetroot powder, and now it's every single day.
Yeah. So it's not elbows up, it's shakers up, right? There you go.
Oh boy, I'll tell you what. Every so often, like once a year, the top pops off when I'm shaking it. And it's the worst.
Oh man. Hey, I love this conversation. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on, Ballsy.
We'll talk to you soon, bud. Take care.
Cheers. Good night.
See ya.